All right, so to kick things off on this demo, I'm going to go to the forge.autodesk.com/myapps website here, and I've already logged in with my credentials, and you see that there's no app created for this particular account that I have. So to get things started, I need to click on this Create App button here on the top right-hand corner of the screen. And here we have the APIs, and we have the ability to select what APIs my app is gonna be able to call. I can use this as a security feature as well, and I can limit my application to not call some APIs that I know for sure that I'm not gonna use. Here we can provide the app name information. So this app name is important, especially for three-legged authentication. This will gonna show when the user requests for authorization and authorizes your application. And also it will show on your statistics for yourself or for your development team. Here I can provide a app description. So let's call this AU demo live. And here I need to provide a callback URL. So a callback URL is particularly important for three-legged authentication because the client or our clients will click on the authorize button there, and they will send that information, or Autodesk will request that information and send it to you with your token or with your authorization code, and you need to process that afterwards. So you need to provide a valid callback URL here that your application is gonna to process the information that you receive back from Autodesk from the three-legged authentication. We're gonna explore that in further details in a minute here, but for now I'm just gonna use the some fake URL here, and this fake URL is gonna be good enough for a purposes demo because I'm gonna show you how the response is formatted, and then you can go ahead and type your code and make sure that you're having a valid callback context to receive that information. Okay, so I don't actually need to provide my website URL in this case because it's just a demo too. So I'll hit create here. And right here, you can see that I have limited my application to only call these three APIs. Here I have my client ID and my client secret. A thing to note here is that the client secret is very, very important, and it's a key for your website or for your application instead. So it's like your password, and you should not allow this to be compromised. None of the users can see that, and you shouldn't share this with anyone else. But for this demo, I'm gonna show this because I'm deleting this app afterwards anyways, so I don't really care about that, and I will show this on the authorizations that I'll do here as well, on the requests that I'll do. Okay, so if you feel like your client secret has been compromised, you can always go back to this website and regenerate that to make sure you have a fresh new one. Okay, so with all that being said, let's begin by actually calling our first endpoint there. So we're gonna call the two-legged authentication request endpoint. So you're gonna see here on forge.autodesk.com, and you go to the authentication and then API reference. Then you click here on post authenticate, and this is for two-legged authentication. Okay, and you see here that they provide a lot of information about how you need to format your request. Notice that this request will be used especially for your backend, your server is going to call this. And here I can show you how you can format that using an application called Postman. So let me pull this over there. And Postman is a pretty cool application because it can allow me to mock things up and to show things off and test things off before I actually do any coding on my application, right? So this can be used as your base point for training or for testing. And yeah, you can actually use this after for generating your code as well. If I click in here, it will show me details for how to format the same thing that I'm doing here on the UI, but using C# or using Java and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly jump back to my application details here, and I'll copy that and pull back to Postman there. Copy this too. Go back to Postman. Control V. Here I have the grant type, and you see here that it must be client credentials, right? And now I need to provide the scopes. So how can I see what type of scopes do I need? If you go back here to any other documentation, let's open up really quickly here. Like let's say a documentation for the BIM 360 APIs. Go here to API reference. Let's say, for instance, that I want to get projects information. Okay, so if I click in there, this will query all the projects in a specific BIM 360 account. And here I can see that I need to have a account read authorization scope. Okay, so to call this, I need to first generate a token that has scope. So I'm just gonna paste in there. So we have account read, and let's put one more here. Let's say that we need to create a project on BIM 362. So I need to have the account write scope too. So to do this, I'm just gonna use my space bar there and paste the second one there. Let's find another one that is other type of scope. Let's see, data management. I'm sure that data management has here on projects. Maybe I have data read right there. So I'm just going to use data read 2. Space, data read right there. So with all that formatted, I'm just need to send that request to Autodesk right there. Notice that this API or this endpoint is going to be called by your server on the background. So it's going to hit send. And that's the result. I have an access token. I have, this is the actual token that I need to provide when I'm calling other APIs on Forge. And this is the type of token, will always be bearer, and it will expire in this amount of seconds right there. So the 3-legged authentication is a little bit more intricate. It has a little bit more steps to it. So let's have a look how we do it. Going back here to the documentation, you can see that we have the 3-legged authentication, and we have kind of 2 steps in there. So I'll just click on this authorize option there, and here you can see the URL request there that we need to do as a get, and there's some information there that you can read with more details later. And here is how you can format the get request or to put that information on your website. All right, so let's see here how we format that URL. First, I'm just gonna go here to this little template that I put together. We have the endpoint in there that is provided on the documentation. Then you have your requests type. And in this case, I'll just put token because I'm using the implicit token option. And I'll go here with the client ID after, and the redirect URL, and the scope of the request. Okay, so going back there to this, I can see here that I have the option to use the response type in there as code for the regular authorization code grant, and the other one is token for the implicit authorization. I'm going to use the implicit authorization first. So in here, I'll just put token. Then I'll just put my client ID that I already have here on Postman. So I'm just gonna quickly copy this there, and then I'll use my redirect URL too. So to use my redirect URL, I need to actually come to here. I'll copy that. So this is my URL that we typed it in the beginning of the demo. But I actually need to come to here and use some type of encoder for that URL, because I'm going to shoot that as a GET request on the URL here. So I need to encode that. So your website needs to do that automatically, or you can provide that template for it. So I'm just going to click on encode, and now I have that encoded. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'll just paste it there. And then I'll provide the scopes too. So I can go back to my Postman. I'm going to use the same scopes here for just simplicity's sake, and I'll paste it in there. Notice that we also need to have some type of encoding for this account scope as well here, because again, this is being called in a URL. So in here, I'll just provide percentage 20 and percentage 20 there. So I'll just go back here and reformat this so we can actually use that. And with all this being done, I'm just gonna hit Control-C there, and I'll open up a new browser tab in there, hit Control-V there, and hit Enter. Then it's gonna ask me for authorization. So this is what your client's gonna see when they try to authorize your application on Forge. So they're gonna hit Next and sign in, and then you see here that the authorization application dialog pops in, and you see here that your app name is shown on the top, and here we have the scopes that I asked for the application, or for Forge to allow my application to use. So data or related accounts. So if the client clicks on allow here, the callback URL will be called, and here you have your callback access token already in place. And you can see here that it's a long URL. Let me just copy this to show here, and callback. We have access token, so this is the token itself, and we also have the token type and expiration. So it's really the same thing as you see here on your response, right? It's the same type of token. You have your token, you have your bearer, and you have your expiration. But behind the scenes, this token is really different than the other one because now it's a 3-legged token. And of course that your actual application is gonna show the user here some congratulations for authorizing with the Forge endpoints and having access now to the actual implementations on the application and things like that. So the other way to get access to three-legged authentication tokens is going here and changing the request type from the other one to code. It's basically the same URL. So I'll just close this down and I'll open another one to avoid any caching. This will process and I need to put my credentials again. Again, this is what the client will see. And then their name and the same scope. I'll hit allow. But this time around, notice here that we only get a code back. This code needs to be called again here on a post three-legged authentication token code. And here you can see that I need to provide my client ID, my secret, my grant type, and this code goes here. And I also need to provide my redirect URL. So this is also something that you want to do in the server because it has your client secret in here as well. You need to send that information to Forge. So when I hit send, see that we have the access token right there. If we can move this around, access token right there. We have the refresh token and the type and the expiration. So really same thing that you had in there, the response type. But let's have an investigation here on what is going on behind the scenes on a Autodesk token. So I'll go to this website here, jwt.io, and let's have a look at the difference between the three-legged and two-legged authentication token. So I'll just copy here and paste, and you see here that it has information about my scope, the client ID, the grant ID, the audience and other stuff in here. And you can see that I have my user ID right there. So this is the main difference between a three-legged and two-legged authentication token. If I go back here to my two-legged authentication token, I'll copy that, duplicate that window right there, and I'll just paste that in. And you see here, since my two-legged authentication is between my server and Forge, you don't have a user ID in between.